Hey there, my name is Justin Belanger. I'm the host of the High Button Podcast. I just want to remind you before this episode starts that this episode is brought to you by CryptoVantage. If you head to the description tab at the bottom there, you will see the CryptoVantage link. Click on that, fill out the white paper at the bottom of the page. CryptoVantage will send you a free information package that will allow you to be just a little bit more educated on cryptocurrency. And why wouldn't you want that? It's free, right? The professional sporting world is slowly starting to dabble in cryptocurrency. Athletes are getting paid in it. Professional organizations are allowing their fans to purchase tickets using it. It's crazy. Let's get ahead. Let's take advantage of this cryptocurrency, okay? Remember, fill out the white paper at the bottom of the sheet. The link is in the description tab, all right? CryptoVantage, High Button Sports. Now, let's start the episode. Boom, Ryan, we are going. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
No, anytime.
I know we were supposed to get a hurricane today, but I don't know if that's happening. So I was like, if this guy comes in a hurricane, that's a good look for you.
I'm out in Fall River right now. It's a lot worse out in Fall River. So
oh, is it?
Pleasant surprise to come downtown. Yeah. It's usually the other way around, but it was nice. Good drive in.
Canceled my golf plans today because of the hurricane.
That's never good.
Have you been playing a lot this summer?
I've been trying to. I usually play a lot more. I'm usually a member out at Oakfield. But obviously last year couldn't come home because of the pandemic and had a baby and everything. So as everybody that has kids knows, it's harder to get out when you've got a toddler running around. But no, I've played probably 5 or 6 times since I've been home. So it's been nice. Yeah, it's been good.
I got into it this year. I love it. It was a great pandemic sport to get into.
Yeah. I've always been a big golf fan. I think a lot of the hockey community is when you have the seasons match up the way they do. And actually I live in Arizona now during the season, so I try and get out during the year as much as I can, but not a lot of time for it. But my game is definitely affected worse than it was before because of everything going on in the world right now. So
why do you live in Arizona? If you work for Pittsburgh,
yeah.
How does that work?
I mean, when you're a scout, you don't really have to live in the same city as your team. We have on the pro side. I'm the director of pro scouting for the Penguins, and so I oversee a staff of 4 guys. But I mean, I live out west. My family has some history in Phoenix. I never lived there, but I was away playing hockey. But my dad coached the Coyotes in the early 2000s, so always loved the area. And then when Pittsburgh wanted me to live west, it was kind of choose where you wanted to be, and I just was familiar with the area, so I chose Scottsdale, Arizona. So
that's wicked.
Yeah, it's a good place to be in the winter time, but nice to come home in the summer because it gets too hot out there in the summertime.
100%. I remember I was doing a video for your dad to cancel the Maritime for kids, the tournament.
Yeah.
And this was probably 2 years ago, and he was talking about the complications of coming home from the States to being here in Halifax. He was thankful that he was here, but he was saying there was so much complication of trying to get home through everything.
Yeah, it was like I said. I didn't even. We had our baby last June, so coming home really wasn't in the cards for us right in the middle of the pandemic. So we were, it's hard to believe, but it was 2 years since I've been able to come home because I love coming home in the summertime. It's obviously my favorite things to do. But we made it work this year. My wife's from the Ontario area, so we spent July in Ontario and came here for all of August. So it's been nice, and it's hard to believe, but I got to leave in less than a week. Unfortunately, the season's coming quick, but it's flown by.
I know. I was on Instagram this morning, and I saw a picture of Marchand back in Boston. I'm like, oh yeah, it's September. Like the boys are back now. It's go time.
Yeah, everybody's getting back at it, and before we know it, the season's going to be here. And we kind of expected that the way last season kind of ended a little bit later than usual, obviously. But it's funny once that calendar turns to September, your brain really starts to turn back on and get back into hockey mode. So I'm excited to get going again.
I feel like your position the past 2 years is extremely difficult being a scout. Travel was limited. I don't know what it was like in the States. I know here it was very limited to travel and to go see other hockey players. That was actually really good for our business, was the live streaming aspect, because grandparents couldn't come in, so we would go into the rink, film, and parents would be outside in the parking lot watching our stream. So during this process, we found out that a lot of scouts were watching our live streams, and that kind of clicked in. And then when I knew you were coming on, I was like, all right, that's a question I'll ask them. How was your job affected this year through COVID, and was travel a little bit limited for you?
Certainly at the start of the year it was. I just do pro, so I just do NHL and AHL games. So from January when the season started, we told our guys just to drive to where you can get to. Now, fortunately, in Phoenix, I can get to LA, Anaheim. I can get to Vegas if I need to by car pretty easily. So, but as the season went on, and I was fortunate enough to be vaccinated pretty early, So once I got fully vaccinated, it was pretty normal. I mean, the only difference is you're going in NHL rinks and there's no fans. So that was a little bit different. You're not sitting in the press box. You're sitting in kind of makeshift areas around the rink, and you're watching NHL hockey in empty buildings. It was a lot different than usual, but you just adjusted. And in the U.S., as the season went along, flights were opening up more and buildings were opening up where there were fans. So the difference from the start of the year to the playoffs was night and day, because come playoff times, a lot of the buildings were full. So I did the pre-scout for the Boston-Washington series when we were playing the Islanders, and both rinks were pretty much full when I was covering that series. So like I said, it started off a little different, but like anything else, you just adjust and. You take what's given to you and make the best of a bad situation, and we did that as well as we could.
When you were watching the NHL games in an empty building, you must have picked up some nice sound bites.
Oh my God, yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, you hear a lot of chirps and things going on the ice if you really listen intently, but it was pretty easy to pick up. You could hear the refs talking to each other. You could hear everything because the acoustics of the building allow for everything to go up, and it was different. You heard a lot of different conversations and yelling back and forth between the benches and stuff, so it was cool that way.
That's sick. So being a scout, I think that's a great job. I think that's really cool. I think you need to know a lot more about the player and the hockey player too, but you need to know about the guy. And we had Trevor Steinberg on here, who I know is your coach, and I love what that guy has to say about scouting players, because he goes on trips to Ontario and tries to recruit her when he was coaching.
Yeah.
And I love whatever that guy has to say about his players. I absolutely love, and it seems like it's 75% about the person rather than the hockey player, and I think that's wicked. I just want to know if you learned anything from maybe Trevor, or just like growing up. I guess you didn't really grow up here, but you definitely played here.
Mm-hmm.
If you learned anything from Trevor in that aspect of getting to know players and the hockey person.
Certainly I did a lot. I played 4 years at St. Mary's, and I always say they were 4 of the best years of my life.
Really?
I loved being there. It was as you mentioned, I'm born in Halifax. Where my family's from here, but we always moved around growing up where I was in the city that my dad was living in. We would just spend our summers here. So when I made the decision after my major junior career to go to school, Halifax was a no-brainer for me, because I had a grandmother at the time that had never seen me play. I had lots of extended family that never seen me play, so it was nice just to be in one spot for 4 years and spend the 4 years at St. Mary's and have a lot of family and relatives come see me play. But going back to your question about Steiny, certainly, one thing I always say about our teams at SMU is we always had a great group of high character, high quality people, and I truly believe that our teams were as close as you can get, and I truly believe that's why we had success on the ice, just because we all got along off the ice and we were all there for each other. And Steiny really did a great job of recruiting high character, quality people, and again, I think that was a huge part of our success, and I definitely carry that on to what I do now. I think now more than ever, character is a huge part of advancing your career as a hockey player. There's a lot of guys that have made extended their careers by a few years simply because they're great to have around the dressing room, and their infectious attitude rubs off on people. So I don't think players realize how much we look into that side of things when it comes to that.
You were a captain in St. Mary's too, so you had a leadership role. Did that come naturally to you, or were you a vocal guy, or did you lead by example? What kind of leader were you?
Well, I mean, it's no secret. I was never one of the best players on my team. I was always kind of a third or fourth line guy. I always say I was a lot more valuable off the ice than I was on it, and Steiny would probably agree with me on that one, as would a lot of my coaches. They probably wish I just stayed in the dressing room when I go on the ice. But no, I think it's just something that I guess growing up around the game with my dad probably helped with that, where my favorite players on his teams growing up were always the guys that were nicest to me, and I would always be running around the room and seeing how they interacted with the other guys in the dressing room and how you relate to different personalities. And I think that was probably certainly one of my strengths, and I probably overextended my playing career because I had that, I guess, leadership and that aspect to my game that people kind of look for and gravitate towards.
Do you have a certain memory maybe of being a kid running into an NHL dressing room and one guy gave you a little bit of advice, anything like that?
I tons of them. Like, that was my childhood was spent around, every chance I got when I wasn't in school or playing my own games. I was at the rink. I was helping out the trainers, folding laundry, doing, all the dirty work for them, filling water bottles. So that's how I grew up. So I think you just naturally, you don't realize it when you're a kid, obviously, but that stuff just rubs off on you, like that's you gravitate towards certain people. And I guess, as I got older, I always bring, and I hate saying this because he's really not that older than me, but Shane Doan was the guy when my dad went to Phoenix. I think I was about 15, and he was only like 20 or 21 at the time. So really, he wasn't that much older than me. But I guess at that stage, I was kind of starting to take my own hockey career a lot more seriously. So I started to pay attention to the way he interacted and the way he worked off the ice and the way he interacted with his teammates and the trainers and all that stuff. And I know he's friends. He's a friend of mine to this day because we're both in the Phoenix area, obviously. Oh, yeah. And I tell him that, like, I don't want to age you, but you're always my favorite growing up, just because of the way he lived his life and the way he treated people, and I've always tried to take that from him.
Speaking of Shane Doan, I couldn't imagine, like, I'm thinking of Austin Matthews too, but what he did for Arizona and the hockey community. Is there anyone else, like, he must be the head honcho there when it comes to the youth of Arizona hockey?
Well, not just hockey, but sports. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, you realize the Coyotes haven't been there that long, but they did a poll in the Arizona newspaper a couple years ago, who's the most popular athlete in Arizona sports history, and Doan won. And so you think, you got basketball, you got football, you got baseball there, and hockey's obviously probably a distant fourth. But he means so much to the community as a hockey player in Arizona. He was voted the most popular athlete in Arizona sports history, wow. Which is, obviously a huge feather in his cap. And to this day, like, the Coyotes just hired him back, and it was obviously a huge feather in the cap for the franchise to bring him back. But yeah, no, it's amazing to see, and he's just as good of a player as everybody knows. He's an even better person. He really is, and I think that's where he rubs off on people.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's incredible that you're buddies with him too. Just to, like,
yeah, no, and his son actually just got drafted by the Coyotes too. A couple weeks ago at the draft there, so I sent him a text, and he was thrilled. And yeah, just a quality man, a quality family man first and foremost. And I liked the way he played too, so that was another aspect of it.
That's wicked.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about your junior hockey career. How did you end up in Brampton?
So I was, going back to minor hockey. We lived in Ottawa for 4 years.
Because your dad was the coach.
He was coaching in Ottawa, but then we moved. When he went to the Islanders, we moved to New York for 2 years, but we kept our house in Ottawa. So when he got fired in New York, we decided to move back to our house in Ottawa, and that was during my Major Bantam year.
Okay.
So that was my OHL draft year coming out of Ottawa. So our second tour back in Ottawa was when I was drafted to the OHL.
Wow. Does Gretzky own that team?
Brampton?
Yeah.
No, actually, they're in North Bay now. Scott Abbott is the owner who invented Trivial Pursuit, and he still owns the team in North Bay. Yeah.
Wait, say that again, sorry?
He invented Trivial Pursuit, the game. He was our owner there in Brampton, now North Bay.
Like, that's how he made his money?
Yeah. And he was around quite a bit. So, yeah, that was how he did it, and he was our owner, and he still is, obviously, that team in North Bay now.
No way.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
When you were playing back in those days, did you know that you wanted a career in hockey when you were done with it?
I guess when you're in, and at that stage, you really don't think about it too much. You're kind of focused. I was fortunate enough to be drafted by Columbus. I was more focused on a pro career and what I wanted to do in that regard. But, as it moved along and it was pretty clear that I wasn't going to advance, you definitely start thinking about it. And that was a big part of the reason why I wanted to come back to school. I had a couple opportunities to turn pro at a junior, and but with my style, I was kind of, played the not the enforcer role, but that was part of what I did. And I was like, do I really want to slug it out in the minors and do this, or do I want to go get my degree when I have the education package and worry about my future? So making that decision was when I really started to think about it. And my dad was in Phoenix at the time and Vancouver while I was at SMU with both teams. And I really, when I was around, like, the few opportunities I had to be around his teams, I would really, watch the interactions with management and coaches and how they talk to each other. And it really probably struck a chord for me while I was doing that. And certainly it's what I know, it's what I grew up around. It's the culture that I grew up around. I've loved it since I was a kid, and fortunate enough, like I said, to be able to stay in the game. But I wouldn't have got my first opportunity in Atlanta if I didn't have my degree from St. Mary's. So everything kind of went hand in hand that way.
That was my next question, was about Atlanta, but what do you mean? Like, they just, like, wanted a degree on your resume to work there?
So, I tell this story how I got hired originally, and people really don't believe me, but I when I finished I played a year in the East Coast League, got hurt, and I decided that summer I was going to, look around and start sending resumes around. But one of the things I really was important to me is I wanted to do it my own way. I didn't want to have my dad, use him to call around. So I literally sent resumes around to teams, hoping to hear back. A couple months went by. Didn't really hear much, and I think it was around November on the NHL.com job board, there was a posting for a hockey operations internship for the Atlanta Thrashers. And I'm like, all right, whatever, I'll apply. I sent my resume in. Didn't hear anything for about a month, and then all of a sudden I got a call from the HR person in Atlanta requesting an interview. I was like, okay, whatever, I'll try this out. So went through that process, and in the process with her, she had asked me if I'd ever been to Atlanta before, and I said, well, no, I never have. But interesting enough, my parents got engaged in Atlanta because my dad was playing for the old Atlanta Flames at the time. And so they have that history there. And she goes, oh, what do your dad do now? And I said, well, he's coaching in the league in Vancouver, and that's kind of how it started. And then Larry Simmons, who's the assistant GM who ended up hiring me, tells that story because he said, you got, your first interview based off your resume and your background and everything. And he goes, one of the big reasons why I hired you was because you didn't use your dad as an avenue to get in. He goes, I like that you were doing things your way. And he said too, like, you wouldn't have got that job if you didn't have your degree. So it was literally a $10 an hour internship where I just kind of got my foot in the door, and it was a small staff and able to work my way up from there. But I tell that story. It's interesting how it happened because if I didn't have my degree, and the way I went about it was how I got hired, for that internship that let me grow into what I am today.
No way. So you just took the honest route and it paid off.
Yeah.
Because you easily could.
He says that. He said, because the HR person went to him and said, well, yeah, this guy's dad coaches in Vancouver, and he kind of looked up. He's like, oh, okay, like he's the assistant coach, not the head coach. He didn't really put the name together, but he's like, okay, I respect the fact that he didn't, try and go through other avenues to get his foot in the door. He's trying to do it on his own. So
what was it like working for the Atlanta Thrashers? It was such a, I don't want to say weird team, but just such a, different team. What was that like?
Definitely an outlier. You know what? I loved it. It was, like I said before, we had a very small hockey operations department because, let's be honest, we didn't have a lot of money. So the staff was very small. So, I go in there as a 26-year-old intern, basically, and I'm like, the GM's office, the assistant GM's office, the coaches, and I'm kind of right in the middle of it because we had such a small staff. So right away, I'm getting thrown into conversations that I really wasn't prepared for or shouldn't have been a part of, but because you're around and you have your foot in the door, you just kind of soak it all in and just you're a part of things just because of that. So like I said, a lot of the stuff I wasn't ready for, and but I got kind of thrown to the wolves, and you just kind of adjust as you go, and fortunate enough to get brought along.
And then the transition over to Winnipeg, you turned into an actual scout. That's what I got from the website.
No, I went, so what was I? I was in charge of player development my last year in Atlanta.
Okay.
Made the move to Winnipeg, and I was just strictly an office guy. I was manager of hockey ops, so I was, I did a lot of contract research, a lot of the day-to-day stuff, so I was just around the team. And then 2 years into Winnipeg, we had an opening on our pro staff, and Chevy, their GM at the time, they're still the GM there, asked me if I'd be interested in doing that job. And I kind of hummed and hawed a bit because you're leaving being around the team every day in that aspect, but you're also gaining experience on the scouting side, which, I had sat in on all the scouting meetings before, but I was kind of running the computer. I wasn't really part of the player conversations. So for me, it was important to get that part of it too.
All I'm picturing right now is Jonah Hill in Moneyball. You're just that guy.
I think he's a lot smarter than I am. But no, I was probably the guy like Larry, who's the guy who still does the contracts and stuff. I did all his research for him. I did a lot of stats analysis. I was kind of under him where he was the guy making the decisions, but I would provide all the necessary stuff to him and give stuff to the coaches. It was kind of, you did a little bit of everything in that kind of job, which was great to gain that experience, but I wanted to really sink my fingers into something, and that's where I decided to go on the pro scouting side.
That's cool. And right now you're the director of professional scouting for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah.
Like that's.
Yeah, you just, like I said, you get your foot in the door and you try not to screw up as much as you can, and don't, try and relate to the right people. And again, it's a relationship-based business like any other industry in the world is. Like if you put your head down and do your job and do it the right way and hope a lot of your recommendations and decisions work out, then you're gonna succeed. And it's like any other business or opportunity in the world. Yep.
I just think of like it's such a unique profession to me. Just not that you're just looking at players in order to bring them to a city. You're moving their family. It's like, I think this guy's great. I want to bring him to play with Sid on his line. It's just such a unique job, and I couldn't imagine being in that position. How many years were you a scout before you got that role in Pittsburgh?
6, 7 years.
6, 7 years.
Yeah, so you put your time in, and you learn pretty quick. It's a business. You have that player mentality, and I tell this to everybody that retires as a player and wants to go into this. Like the conversations that take place behind the scenes, like you're really not prepared for. You don't really understand how much work goes into it until you see it.
Can you give me an example of like a conversation behind the scenes that you weren't prepared for?
I'll tell you that I tell this one a lot actually. Is when I was in Atlanta, so I just stopped playing. I was 27 years old, and I think it was our last year in Atlanta, and I won't name the player's name, but we had signed an older veteran player, well respected, been around the game for a long time. And it was clear he was on the downside of his career, and halfway through the year, he was done. Like, it was just like, okay, what are we going to do with him here? We have a decision to make. Like, we don't want to insult the guy. We don't want to send him down. And they said, okay, the ultimate decision was that we were going to put him on waivers. If he cleared, send him down, and hopefully he just retires and get it happens. And I remember sitting there and I'm listening to this conversation go back and forth, and I looked, and Rick Dudley was a GM at the time, and I go, oh, I just, for whatever reason, decided to open him up. Oh, no, we can't do that to a guy like him. Like, we have too much respect for him. And I'll never forget, in unison, like, everybody in the room kind of like looked at me and goes, basically like, shut up, kid, that's exactly what we're going to do. Like, kind of like, okay, like, this is a business decision, we have to make it. And I was just like, okay, there's my welcome to this to the dark side, like I say. Unfortunately, you have to make those tough decisions sometimes, and if it's for the betterment of the team, you just have to do it. And obviously that was my kind of, okay, like, I guess this is, it's a real business, it's a multi-million-dollar industry, a lot of money at stake, a lot of investment at stake, and sometimes tough decisions have to be made, and you can't take the allow the personal element, I guess, to get in the way.
You're employed by the Pittsburgh Penguins, who I think is one of the best NHL franchises going. Maybe not even just in professional sports, like, it's up there. And
Absolutely, yep.
I think when Sid went there, he changed the culture, at least from watching on TV and stories I hear every now and then. First class. I was wondering what you could tell me about the Pittsburgh Penguins organization and how you see that first class and how you see the professionalism. Because you have a Stanley Cup ring, and you don't get a Stanley Cup ring from just going to work and not caring. So I was wondering if you could give me a little taste, and the listeners a little taste of the expectations every day of going to work.
Yeah, well, everything you said is true. It's like I said, I came from Winnipeg, and I have nothing but good things to say about the organization there as well. We are still in a building up phase. So when I went to Pittsburgh, I joined them in between the 16 and 17 cups they had just won. And you just, as soon as you walk through the doors there, everything is about winning. There's no cost spared, there's no expense spared. It's if our ownership and our management believes that this is any little edge we can take towards winning, they're going to do it. We've never been turned down for a player contract request, whether it's bonus money, whether it's anything on that regard. From my perspective, when I'm running the scouting staff, no expense has ever been spared. It's just, do whatever you have to do to get there to see the player if it's going to make a difference. And I truly believe it's those little things that make a difference. And in Pittsburgh, we're fortunate enough to have ownership that believes in that and really practices what they preach, and from top to bottom, it really it helps that you got a guy like Mario that played the game and understands that all those little things matter. Listen, Sid sets the culture for our organization every single day, and every story you hear about him is true as well. And like I said, from top to bottom, those are the expectations, and you better follow through on them, because that they're lofty expectations, definitely, but trust me, it's all worth it when you lift that cup.
Is there any leadership ability that you bring to work every day, being the director of Pro Scout? There must be people under you that are looking for advice from you. What kind of advice do people look for from you?
Yeah, it's different. I mean, this will be my third year in that role, and we've had three different. Obviously last year was different with the pandemic. We couldn't really get out too much. But my first year, we had Craig Patrick was under me. We had Michel Goulet, who's a Hall of Famer, Dwayne Sutter, like a lot of experienced hockey men. So a lot of in my first year in that leadership role, I was really leaning on them for their expertise from the hockey side of things, and trying to respect the fact that they've been around the game for a long time, so it's a little bit of a different element. And then this year we've hired two new guys, Kerry Huffman and Will Acton. Will's a young guy, first year scouting. So he's really, trying to very green, trying to, get his foot in the door, and I'm trying to help him in that regard, just in terms of his scheduling and, even little things like, where do you stay when you go to Chicago? What hotel do you stay in? What time should I get there? What door do I go in at the rink? All those things, little things that you don't worry about. And then from my perspective, just overseeing them, it's making sure we have the proper coverage. So on the pro side, every scout is assigned a certain amount of teams that they're responsible for, and we have to make sure that we have the amount of coverage necessary leading up to our midseason meetings to get ready for the trade deadline. And so really just monitoring their schedules, making sure they're getting their games in, their reports in on time. And then, like I said, if player transactions come up, it's on me to call them, be like, okay, we're talking to just Toronto, for example. This is what Ron's talking to, and here's who he's thinking. Where are we going from here? Where is this guy going to fit? So it's a constant everyday, you're always on top of things and making sure, because when your boss calls for an answer, you better have it.
How often are you in communication with the head coach?
Not so much. I mean, I'm in there probably once a month or so, and I'll be in there for training camp. So when you're in there, obviously day to day, I did, like I said, I did the pre-scout last year for the playoffs, so that's more of a coaching where I'm watching from a coaching perspective. So talk to Sully before that. But no, like we give the coaches the players, they coach them, and that's about it. So throughout the year, really only when I'm in there and around the team, I'll spend some time in the coach's office, and they'll ask me what I'm seeing around the league. They'll tell me what's going on around the team, and vice versa. So not a whole lot during the year. More so, when decisions are being made around free agency and trade deadline time, when our jobs really come to fruition.
When you give an assignment to, let's say, someone that's in Toronto and you want to scout the Maple Leafs, what would your report look like? What questions would you be asking? Would you be like, is there a third line winger? How does he handle pressure on the boards? Is he able to chip past pressure and gain speed through the neutral zone? Like, what kind of questions are you asking your scouts to look for?
Well, first of all, like we tell them, like, we want reports on every single player in the league at least twice a year. So,
Wow.
even if it's a guy that we really have no interest in acquiring or anything, you have to have a trail of reports. Now, there's certainly going to be more emphasis on potential trade targets or free agents, so they'll have a lot more reports in our system. But yeah, we want to have a trail of everybody, because our report system really goes back to when a guy's 15, 16 years old. You can pull up his game reports and go all the way through his NHL career. So you need that track, and it's interesting to see that, like, where a player's trending up, down, anywhere. And then, the difference on the pro scouting side as opposed to the amateur is we are very much focused on the now. Obviously, amateur, you're projecting to the future. But if we call and we identify, if Sully identifies we need some size and grit on our third line, well, we're going to have to go out and find a list and put a list together of guys that we think could be a fit for us right now. So whether it's through trade or free agency or waiver claims or anything, like, our job is to stay on top of that throughout the year as best as we can. So when those questions arise, we're prepared for the answer.
In the summertime, I'm assuming you like to take time off. We go, you say you golf, you had a kid, you're a family man, you take time off. But are you always in the back of your head thinking, like, for this company, like, even if I'm golfing, I'm still thinking.
Yeah.
But are you always thinking about it?
Your brain's always on.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like, certainly in the summertime, it's a lot less than during the year. Like, I mean, in a typical year, once free agency's done, like, the first couple of days of July, you really have from mid-July through mid-August where you can kind of shut it off. And that's typically in our industry when everybody kind of goes on their vacations with their families and takes the time away. But yeah, like, you need to do that though. And I always say that the only place in the world I can really come and shut it off is our lake house on Grand Lake, because I get there and I relax. That's why I love coming home so much, because I know I'm home and there's nothing around me that I need to be, really taken care of business wise. I can just chill out and enjoy some time in the water and spend some time with friends and family in Halifax and go golfing. So you do need to turn your brain off, because once that season comes, it's all day, every day, man. Your brain's always on. Where am I going next? What city am I in next? What game am I at? You're jumping all over the place and phone calls and everything. So you need, I think, for more of your mental health than anything, you need to be able to turn it off. And I think we're just all programmed that way, where it's, okay, mid-July through mid-August, we're shutting it down for a bit.
That's sick. Jeff, is it all good over there? You sure? Going into training camp, you said you're leaving next week.
Yeah, so we actually, my wife and baby and dog and I drove here from Phoenix, so we're not doing that. We're going to ship the car back, but so time frame now is we're leaving next week. We're shipping the car back next Saturday, and then actually, fortunate enough this year, normally I'd be going to a rookie tournament in Traverse City or somewhere around there, but Arizona's actually hosting it this year. So
No way.
I get to stay home for a few extra days and cover that rookie tournament. Our guys will be spread out to the rookie tournaments around the league, and then I'll be going into Pittsburgh, I think, on the 21st for training camp. So it's coming quick.
Is your old man in Dallas right now?
No, he's still home, but
is
he's
he?
leaving. We're both leaving around the same time. So yeah,
Nice.
he had shoulder surgery actually, so he's on the mend. He's taking care of that all summer and watching my little guy run around. So yeah, he'll be on the same time frame as me. But he's the same way. His brain's going back on too. He's starting to work a little bit here too. So
I recently worked a golf tournament, the Jordan Boyd Memorial Tournament, and I was lucky enough to be able to ask a panel of NHL guys some questions. And your dad was up there, and I was asking him some questions. And the question was, how did you find, like, the Stanley Cup run during the bubble when there was no fans? And he completely disregarded the question and just went into what he wanted to talk about. And what he wanted to talk about was how tight of a team Dallas was that year when they went to the finals. And I don't want to say he started to cry, but like he was so emotional about that team and that run and the passion that was oozing out of him into, I don't know, there was probably 200 people there. You could the room was still. It was unbelievable. Just looking at this man who's accomplished so much, talk about a run. And when I saw that passion, I thought of this question for you. Does that passion from him run to you into your job? The only way this company is successful is through passion. The hard work, don't get me wrong, but passion. So I just want to know if you think do you think you're a more hard worker, or do you think you have more of a passion for the game?
I think it's certainly a combination of both. I have
Yeah.
a very, very strong passion for the game, and certainly, like going back to your first point, definitely inherited from him. You know, I grew up obviously around him and learning from him and watching him on a day-to-day basis. And to this day, he says, like, you know, every day in the National Hockey League is a great day, and there's no taken for granted. And you know, you look at him; he's been in the league since 1975, and he still says that to this day, where he still respects and appreciates the game. And I've definitely inherited that. You know, I pinch myself a lot, where you're very fortunate to do what you do and get to travel around to NHL rinks and be around NHL people, and you know, certainly have my own career expectations and goals, and you know, working towards that, and that's the hard work aspect of it. But you don't get to this point if you don't have a passion for the game. It's very demanding and time consuming and hard on your family and grueling, a lot of travel. So if you don't have a passion for it, you're not gonna last very long. And I've seen in my time working it, I've seen a lot of, you know, former players or everybody getting their foot in the door and just decide it hasn't been for them because maybe they haven't had the passion, maybe the work was too much, I don't know. But you'll never find me complaining a day about what I do, and again, that's related to the passion I have for it.
What was the common trait of the Pittsburgh Penguins organization? Sorry to go back to that, but I forgot to ask this question. What was the common trait of everybody in the organization for that 2017 season when they won the Cup? Like all the way up to like the people that sell the season tickets to the water boy. Like what was the common personality trait of everyone that year when they're all working towards one goal?
Yeah, it was so interesting to come in that situation because like it was almost like they just expected to win. Like it was just everybody in the organization from top down. They had done it the year before, but anything less than that was just not going to be accepted. And you know, the heated debates we would have over players in scouting meetings or a trade deadline, like we got into a few big arguments over players that year because, again, anything less than winning that Stanley Cup was just not going to be accepted, and we still have that to this day. Obviously, hasn't come to fruition since that first year I was with them, but I think when you get a taste of winning, which that team had the year before, you can always say, yeah, I want to win, I want to win, but you don't really know what that feels like until you do it. And then once you do it, it makes you want it even more, if you can believe that. You would think there'd be a little bit of complacency where, okay, I've got my cup, I'm good, I'm ready to go. And I can certainly agree with that because now, having been through it myself, I thought I wanted to win the Stanley Cup before we won it. And now that we have, I want it even worse every year. And it's when you lose, you take it personally. You do, and that's a trait that everybody in that organization has.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. Everyone just working towards one goal. And if you win it, you want it more.
Yeah. No, you do. And I've talked to several people after the fact that have won it with other organizations. And I remember having this conversation actually with John Sim at a golf tournament. I say, you know, I thought I wanted, you know, a cup ring before, but now that I have one, like I want the other one way more. He goes, yep, that's the same way everybody thinks.
Why? Is it because you think you have like a recipe? It's like you win it once, you're like, okay, I know how to do that. Like,
you know, it's almost like a personal thing. It's like you watch somebody else walking around with that Stanley Cup, and you're like, that's mine. You know what I mean? That should be ours. Like that's, you know, and I think that's just an organizational trait that we have that, you know, that's your cup, and you want it back. And you know, now that you've had a taste of it, it's a pretty intoxicating feeling for sure.
Can you can't even answer this, but can you describe the feeling of like being in the room celebrating?
You really can't.
You
like
can't. No.
I'll never forget the night we won in Nashville. It was Game 6, and it was a 0-0 game. And I remember I was sitting in the press box with the a couple other management people and stuff like that. And the third period, you just like I remember our hockey ops manager trying to talk to me the whole third period. And I just wouldn't even look at him. I was just so. You know, you're so on edge, and you're that close, and you're one win away, and it's a 0-0 game in the third period, and then Hornquist scores, and just the feeling that went through my body when we all jumped up, and you know, we all ran. I remember running to the elevator with everybody to go down to the ice, and we were like, it was like you're walking on air. Like you don't even like. I remember looking around, like, you know, they had all been through it the year before, obviously. But I was the only one that hadn't, and I'm like, is this happening? Like, is this really like, is this going on? And then, yeah, that whole night was just incredible. It was just a blur, but you just try and soak everything in and take it all in, and you know, you get your couple seconds with the cup, obviously, and it was awesome. And you know, the whole experience was just like you said, you can't put it into words until you actually go through it.
That's incredible. Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the walking on air. I like that. You just
You
go
literally
in there,
did.
you just,
I'll never forget that elevator ride down to the ice, and I'm just looking around, and like you're trying to calm yourself down, I guess, because there was still, I guess, a minute and a half left in the game, and
yeah.
they were actually reviewing the goal while we were in the elevator. So my mom was at and Dad were at the game, and my mom texted me being like, "Oh, they're reviewing the goal," and I was like, kind of looking around at the guys, like.
Oh, on the elevator down?
On the elevator ride down, my mom texted me saying they're reviewing this goal, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And we're like on our way to the ice. We're like, "Oh, thankfully the goal counted, and we got the empty net. It was good." But yeah, it was just you don't even know how to react. You don't know how you're going to react in that situation. And it was just there's no way to put it into words, I guess.
That was a weird game. I remember, like 0-0. There wasn't really much going on.
Mm-hmm. No, it was tight, and I remember I think they had a 5-on-3 in the third period. And I was like, oh my God, we're going back to Pittsburgh, and I think it was like for a long one, like a minute and 20 seconds, and we killed it off. And our guys played so hard that night, and obviously, Sid was the best player in the world in that whole series, really, even the games that we lost. So, but yeah, it was a tight game, and they made us wait till the bitter end to get it done, but the guys got it done for sure.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Could you? Maybe you can't tell me that, but I was gonna say, like, what are the plans for Pittsburgh right now going forward with Sid's career? I'm not saying winding down, but obviously he wants to win a cup again.
Yeah, that's the focus. That's our main focus. That hasn't changed, even with the new management. Our mandate is to win a Stanley Cup as long as we have this core intact. Our job to them is to provide them with the proper players around them and resources around them to do it, because we've made that promise. These guys, they've been career Pittsburgh Penguins, not just Sid, the other core guys as well. And, that's the goal. That's the mandate. It hasn't changed. When I get told differently, I'll adjust, but I haven't been told any differently.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess, it's true. You do have a guy that's telling you where to go, what direction, what type of players to bring in.
Mm-hmm. And I've experienced both sides of it. Again, in Winnipeg, when I started on the pro scouting side, we were, our amateur staff was more, I guess, not for lack of a better term, in the spotlight, because we were building towards the future, and we were selling off assets at the trade deadline for draft picks. So you're kind of, your work is a little bit frustrating because you're scouting for the pro side and your assets are getting sold off. So flip side to what we've done the last few years, it really affects the amateur staff. Those guys work very hard all year to prepare for the draft, and we're trading their picks away to bring in players to help the Penguins at the time. So, it's both staffs work extremely hard. It's just different mandates, and like I said, for now, our mandate is we're going for it.
I love it. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Sid's still. I think Sid's still one of the best in the world. If not, I think he's top 2. The way I say about Sid is that he's able to adapt to the game so well.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say one aspect of his game isn't there, I think that another aspect of his game will pick up. I think that in his last year in the NHL, he could have 50 assists because he sees the ice better than he already does. Maybe he's just that type of guy. At least when I watch on TV.
Yeah, I say it in the nicest way possible. He's a complete freak of nature. He really is.
Yeah,
it's just the way he operates, the way he runs our dressing room, the way he can, as you say, adapt to the style and changes in the game, the way he's improved. He could be a defensive player of the year award every year. That's just the way he plays. He plays a solid 200-foot game, and all the little things that he does that the casual hockey fan might not certainly notice, but an experienced one would. Like those are the things that help you win, and he's just his mindset is all about winning.
And that's what I feel. I feel he'd fill water bottles to win. Like he would just do anything.
No, it's true. There's no ego. Like it's just I've known him since I was still playing, so obviously teenagers when I first met him, trained with him at the same gym at SMU and stuff, and so getting to be around him, from that to where he was, that being around him like in the finals every day in that cup run, and just seeing how the intensity in his eyes every day and how seriously he takes it and how his attitude just kind of rubs off on the rest of the team is, you can never gain a full appreciation for it until you're around it.
I was saying, you said it, but it must be nice having an owner that's played the game before. And I don't know how the professional side works when it comes to asking for money, but having a guy to ask for money that's been in the game and knows that side of it, that must be a good feeling.
Yeah, it's for sure. I mean, he gets it. He's He obviously oversees everything, and our general manager certainly reports to him and runs everything through him. But from my perspective, like he's been around and in meetings and just kind of stands in the background, lets us talk about players and do our thing, and he's not challenging us or putting his 2 cents in there. He's just allowing us to do our jobs and respects that, and that's why he's so great. He gets it. He knows what works, what doesn't, what his role is, and he is who he is for a reason. I'll say that.
Have you ever played in one of those lunchtime Pittsburgh Penguins
A
games?
few times, yeah.
Was
Yeah,
that
a
Lemieux
few
ever on
times.
the ice?
Mario never came out in those ones. No, his son Austin was out a few times. But no, I've never been on the ice with Mario. I've been on the ice with Gretzky. I've never been on the ice with Mario.
No.
Yeah.
How old were you when you were on the ice with
I was
Gretzky?
still playing. So when my dad was with Phoenix, he was one of the owners back then. So I would train down there in the summertime, and he'd come out for our skates. So the guys used to laugh at me because it'd just be like informal skates, and I'd be in the dressing room. I'd always wait to see which jersey color he grabbed, so I could go grab the same one and be on the same team as him. So yeah, that was way back in almost 20 years ago now. So
Did
it's
he
a
still
while
have
ago.
it?
He still had the brains. Like, it was amazing. He'd be making passes. You always had to be ready. Like, he saw the ice like unbelievably. He gave me one of those behind the net off the side of the net passes in the slot to me one time, and it was just like, you get ready for it. But yeah, he had the vision still for sure.
See, that's what I feel about Sid. Like, see, he'll just still have that. Like, those guys are, they're just
No, you don't
different.
lose
They're
that.
different.
Yeah, you don't lose that. They think the game differently, and it's hard to put into words how they see it, because I'm a plugger that sees the game completely different than they do. But you have to respect it, obviously.
Awesome. How much time are we at right now? 45 minutes. Are you good for time right now?
Yeah,
You
I'm
sure?
good. Yeah, no problem.
So when you go to Arizona, what's like what? I don't know if you're allowed to tell me this, but what's like the first order of business? Like, what are you looking for? Like, right as soon as you get back into work mode.
Like I said, I have that rookie tournament planned.
Yeah.
So those are great because it gives you a view, first of all, of the kids coming up in everybody's systems, but also from a personal perspective, it turns your brain back on to the scouting aspect of it, because you're away for a few months. You got to turn the hockey brain back on. So yeah, that'll be good for that, and just get a book on some of these kids, and then right to Pittsburgh for training camp, where I'll be, we'll have a few full days of practices and inter squad games, a couple exhibition games, and then again we're off and running as the season creeps up closer and closer here.
And the NHL, it's full fans, right? We're good to go.
You know what? I think that's the plan. Again, this Delta variant might change things. I think there's going to be a lot of teams mandating full vaccinations for fans to come in the rinks and stuff like that. So I mean, we haven't gotten any final word on every single team. I've seen some Canadian teams come out and say you're going to require full vaccinations, and I'm sure there's going to be some American teams follow suit. But that's the plan as of now. Nobody's told me anything different.
So I think the Mooseheads just announced you have to be double vaxxed, and you have to have proof of a COVID test 72 hours prior to the game, and you have to wear a mask. But everyone's allowed in.
I think we're going to have to wear masks in the press boxes. I think that's going to be mandated. But again, nothing's really come out official from the league as what our protocols are going to be yet.
That part of the job must be fun for you, like the fan aspect, even though I know you're not like on the ice playing, but just going into a rink and seeing the atmosphere. I'm assuming you're still a kid and a fan at heart.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure. I have my buildings that I love going to and I look forward to every night. Like, for me, Montreal is still the best atmosphere in the game. You walk into that building and you go upstairs and you're at a hockey game, man. You're at a hockey game when you walk into that rink and you see what's going on there. So I love going there. Chicago's obviously a great one too. That national anthem in Chicago is the best there is. So I always make sure I'm in my seat for that anthem when that thing goes on. But hey, you have your favorite rinks and buildings and cities that you go to. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back with full buildings for sure.
Is one of the most chaotic weeks or maybe months of your job before the draft?
You know what? For me, I mean, from the pro perspective, not so much. That's more for the amateur guys getting their draft lists together. I'm around. I really don't. I mean, unless we're making a trade, I don't have much to offer. That's their Stanley Cup. The amateur guys, they get ready for that all year. They prepare all year for that draft. So you respect that and you let them have their time. And we have a great amateur staff in Pittsburgh that does the same thing. But listen, I'm around, but I would never sit here and try and take any credit, because bottom line is I don't see these kids. I don't watch the juniors or college kids play. I'm focused on the pro side, so that's their time, and they do a great job at that.
Focusing on the pro side must be a really different dynamic when it comes to, I don't want to say ego, but just it's the NHL locker room is a holy grail, and you and I both played. We know what goes on in the hockey dressing room, but I've never played on the pro side and played with millionaires. But I've heard, if you put someone in the room that isn't the best, it could ruin a team. And you must have that responsibility of just getting to know the guy and making sure if you're putting someone in a room, you got to make sure that they gel well with everyone.
For sure. And it's a huge part of it. Like, we all talk, we all gather information on players, both off the ice. What kind of guy is he? How is he in this dressing room? Like, let's say you're talking about acquiring a player that was somewhere else before, you'll call somebody from that team, their trainers. How were they to deal with? And the one thing I will say about our dressing room is it's so good and has such great leadership that you can introduce maybe a guy or two that has had a questionable past, because he's coming into an environment that this is the mandate, and if you don't follow suit and you don't, like, you got the best player in the world that is the first guy on the ice every day and last guy off, last guy in the weight room, and it's like, okay, if you don't get in line and you don't follow suit, like, you're going to look pretty stupid here. You're not going to get involved. So we definitely have that to our advantage. Fortunate enough that some teams might not, but for sure, the character aspect goes into every decision that we make, every player decision. And hey, let's be honest, the way of the world right now with social media and everything, like, that's probably even more prevalent, and it's only going to get more of a priority as we move along here.
That's what Siller said when he was in Pittsburgh. He's just like, the standard is set. You don't really, it's set. Yeah. You just walk in and you feel it in the dressing room. There's no, you're there to win a cup.
And hey, let's be honest, it's a pretty intimidating dressing room to walk in as a player. You get traded there, let's say you're a young guy, and you walk in and Sid's sitting there and Gino's sitting there and Letang's over there, and it's like, okay, like, I better adapt here. I could be on my way out the door pretty quick. But I think it's something that players probably have coming in, but Sid does such a great job of welcoming everybody involved. And I think once they're in there for a little bit of time, he makes everybody feel pretty comfortable.
I love talking about the little details of an NHL player. When we had McKinnon on, we were talking about this, and we were saying Babcock was talking about Lindstrom, and now he's like, Lindstrom, he only has a long career. Don't get me wrong, he's great, but he cares about the little details. And if you're going to be a pro in this league for 20 years, you better be eating that same oatmeal every morning. You better be doing that stretch at 10 a.m. every morning. You better be doing the little details. How do you find out if those guys are doing the details? Who do you call?
You just, again, you dig as deep as you can on players. Like, if you have relationships with past coaches or trainers or the guys around the team every day, that – you know what it's like. It can be, minutious at time, where it's like, okay, you're around the guy every day for so long, things rub off on you that you don't even realize you're seeing or doing or everything like that.
See, okay,
so, you know what I mean? So, anybody that you can reach out to around, the player in the dressing room, or even if you know somebody from their personal life, if you know buddies, if you know family members, if you know that, you do as much digging as you can. Now, a lot of it on the amateur side, they'll call former teachers or former principals or stuff like that, see how they are at school. It reaches far back. Yeah, absolutely. It's you got to remember, we're making multi-million-dollar investments into these players, and if you screw a couple of them up, that's going to look bad on you. So it's going to look bad on your job as well. So you have to be as prepared for every decision that you make. And if I tell kids all the time, what you do off the ice is almost just as important as the way you are on the ice when it comes to these kind of decisions. And we've seen players removed from draft lists for different situations over the years due to character concerns and stuff like that. And again, I think it's only getting worse than it is, because of social media, because of the access that we have to these players now. It's players have to be so careful with how they live their day-to-day lives.
I worked Luke Green's hockey camp, and we were doing some behind-the-scenes footage, and he asked me to go do a talk to the kids about the importance of social media and how you have to be careful, but also how you can benefit from it. There's a lot, like, I understand there's a lot of things about social media that you have to be careful with, for sure, 100%, but there's also a side of it that you can, you can start a little business. You can use it to your advantage. But I agree with you 100% that the kids have to be careful.
Oh yeah, and like you say, there's a fine line there. I mean, I'm probably in the area where I didn't grow up with social media, so I'm not big on it and Twitter and all that stuff. That's just not who I am, but I understand that the kids coming up today, that's what they grow up with, and that's how they interact with each other. So I certainly understand that. It's just adapting to the way of the world, but with that, there could become consequences too. You just have to be so careful these days, and probably rightfully so.
What relationships do you value the most in your job? Like, is it with the trainers? Is it with the managers? Is it with coaches? Is it with players? Like, what relationships do you really value in your profession?
Certainly, I mean, everybody you come in contact with in the game. Like, I try and relate as best I can to everybody in every role. Obviously, the other scouts with other teams. First of all, our guys, the guys that I oversee, and you gain great relationships with them whenever you're around them. But the nature of our business is, the reality is, you're around other scouts from other teams more than you're around your own team, because if you live in the same area as a guy, you're going to see him at the same buildings and the same times and the same hotels. We all stay at Marriott hotels. It's no secret. So we see each other in the lobbies and the gyms and stuff like that. So I value that, and you gain an appreciation for and a respect level for guys from other teams that do it, and you learn about their organizations and how they operate. And for sure, that's one of my favorite parts about going to the rinks every night. You see opposing GMs from both teams. You see all the other scouts. You get to know the media relations people in the press box, and just again, you just try and treat everybody the same and treat them with the same amount of respect, and you gain respect that way.
Can your reputation be ruined quickly if you're not honest? Maybe like about injuries, maybe about certain things. But I'm sure there's been plenty of things that could have benefited you.
Yeah.
But you had to be honest and say, no, look, I'm sorry. He has this knee thing. No, he has a,
Yeah, it's certainly a fine line.
Yeah.
You try and stay as positive as you can about people. But at the end of the day, if you don't tell the truth about somebody and it comes back on you, that's a reflection on you as well. So there's certainly that fine line you have to walk. You can't give out too much information, and everybody knows that. They respect that. It's part of their job too. They're doing the exact same thing. So if you can't tell somebody something, you just tell them, listen, I can't share that information with you. And it's like, okay, fine.
How often does that happen? Like when you're just like, I'm sorry.
Quite often.
Does it?
Yeah, quite
Really?
often. Yeah. I mean, because you get to know these guys on a personal level too. But at the end of the day, your paycheck's coming from the Pittsburgh Penguins, so that's your loyalty, right? So there is that fine line where there's a competitive balance, and you have to watch that. But if there's something, if there's information that you're comfortable sharing, whether it's about a former player or anything like that, sure, you got to help a guy out, because you might be calling him for the same question a couple weeks later.
How old were you when you realized the hockey world is extremely small?
Pretty quick. You learn it pretty quick. You have these relationships with people, and they know somebody that knows you or play with you or played against you. Now it's obviously changed. When I first started, I was at an age where I had played with or against a lot of the guys that we were talking about. So that aspect has certainly changed. Where it's obviously a younger generation coming up. I'm 38 years old now, so a lot of the guys that I play with or against are on their way out as players and trying to get in now. But it happens pretty quick. Like I said, and I was fortunate enough to enter the league where I had known people through my dad, and had run into them at different buildings and say hi and that stuff. So I had that already. But yeah, you learn pretty quick that it's a very small world, and like I said, I pinch myself on a daily basis that I get to work in this industry every day.
Ryan, you're the man. Thank you for coming.
No, anytime. It was fun, guys. I appreciate you guys having me on.
I just have one more question for you. Advice for that the kid that wants to get into, I guess, you don't have to say scouting, but just wants to get into pro hockey, maybe off the ice. Any advice?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mentioned how I started. I took a $10 an hour internship and just did whatever I could to get my foot in the door. Now, like whether that's in junior hockey, whether it's in pros in the American League, doesn't matter. Like you just have to get your foot in the door, and you'll gain relationships once you're in. I realize that's easier said than done. I was fortunate enough to get in the way I did, but whatever you can do to get your foot in the door. Be yourself, stand up for your beliefs, and have an opinion on players, and hope you're right more than you're wrong. And listen, you're not going to be right all the time. You can't focus on past mistakes, and just focus on the right ones, and be yourself. And like I said, build those relationships and talk to as many people as you can, because like any other industry in the world, a lot of it is relationship based.
Wicked. Ryan, once again, man, thank you for coming. I do appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Everyone listening, thank you very much for tuning in. Today's Thursday. Week's almost over. Summer's over. Enjoy fall.
Don't say that. Not yet.
Sorry. Enjoy the hockey season. Training camp's going to be back soon. Enjoy hockey. Hopefully the Jays win, get a wild card game, something, whatever. All right, we're out. Peace. We hope that you guys enjoyed that episode. I know we did. Remember, head on over to the description tab at the bottom, click the CryptoVantage link, fill out the white paper at the bottom of the page, receive a free information package from CryptoVantage, and start getting educated on the cryptocurrency world. Once again, thank you very much for tuning in to the High Button Podcast. We hope you enjoyed. Enjoy the rest of your day.